Hello, everyone. I am going to help you get started with self-directed project-based learning in your classroom or your home learning environment or on the road or wherever you want to do project-based learning with your students. So, self-directed project-based learning is when students do the designing. They design the project from start to finish, and they execute the project and lead the project. They lead the experience while you guide and facilitate. So project-based learning is often looked at as the teacher sets up all these collaborations. There's a lot of work on the front end for the educator or for whoever is implementing these project-based learning experiences for their class or their students. Self-directed puts that ownership on the students. So the students develop these incredible life skills, 21st century skills, simply because the process is self-led. Students organize the experience. They have to make decisions, which is a really important skill in life. They have to plan, coordinate, communicate, collaborate. There's all of these things that, all of these really important skills that come along with the process of self-directed PBL. So I would encourage you to adopt this teaching strategy with your students. So what do you need to do this? Basically, the idea behind self-directed project-based learning is that students take either some content that you give them, so maybe it's subject-based, such as genetics. Maybe you're working on a genetics unit, or you're just giving them kind of the free-for-all to do what they want and plan and execute projects based on their own personal interests. There are a variety of ways to do that. I'll get into it in a second. But basically what happens is that, let's say you're looking at a classroom of 20 students. Each student is doing their own thing. They're having a project-based learning experience that they themselves designed, and they're going to do that experience on their own. And you as the facilitator are going to guide that experience, have checkpoints, provide feedback, and so on. So what do you need? You need a personal learning plan. A personal learning plan, the way that I use it is that because it's self-directed, every student's project is customized to who they are as individuals, who they are on a personal level. So a personal learning plan really gets those personal attributes out for you to learn more about your students and what they need in the design process. As well as themselves. It's a good place for them to really figure out what they're interested in, what their goals are, what career they might want to go into, what their skills are, what their challenges are. And they use all of that to say their interests and their goals. They use those interests and their goals to help plan these self-directed project-based learning experiences. So my personal learning plan has a space where students can really look into and dig deep about their interpersonal skills and what they have to offer, what their needs are in any project-based learning experience. And then there's another piece to that personal learning plan where students can then plan their session or plan a project-based learning experience based on what they have discovered about themselves, like their goals and strengths. Then you also need project design tools. I haven't always done this with my students, but because a lot of students are not accustomed to self-directed anything, let alone self-directed project-based learning, typically I know my personal high school and elementary school experience, a lot of things were handed to me. I was handed information. I didn't have to design my own learning experiences. So when you get a new student in your door or a student that hasn't, maybe all of your students haven't done this before, they're going to need guidance. They're not going to know how to write a driving question, likely. They're likely not going to know that authentic presentations and authentic learning experiences are a really important piece of a project-based learning experience. So the design tools really help guide them through the project-based learning design process. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of overwhelm. So I use a tool, it's a design workbook that I give my students, and it basically goes through these mind maps of what their interests are, what topics they would like to study, what community experts would really go well with those topics, what kind of authentic audience are they going to reach, and how are they going to reach them. This workbook helps guide them through that whole process, to the point then where they need a project proposal or the guiding templates that are used during the project experience. So this isn't the design phase anymore. This is the actual experience. So students they need certain templates such as a project proposal, a checklist, feedback forms, a community expert log where they can add experts that they've come in contact with or communicated with or have collaborated with. The project proposal piece is really important. That is where students take what they've designed and put it into one page that this is exactly what I'm going to do. And then I, as the teacher, sign off on that plan. Planning materials, this is not completely necessary, but I have found it really helpful with myself and my students that I have a planner and a calendar in a Google Slides, and so do my students. And it's very specifically designed for self-directed project-based learning. Again, that's not technically necessary, but it's helpful, especially if it's shareable, because then you can see what your students are planning. You can see what they have in their calendars. And then evaluation materials are really important. You're likely not going to, well, this isn't necessarily true, but you're likely not going to test on a project-based learning experience because everyone's experiences are going to be really different. And you're not necessarily only measuring content knowledge, you're also measuring growth. You're also looking at if their goals were met, what 21st century skills have been developed, and so on. And so for project-based learning, I typically use project reflections. My students always reflect on any learning experience, project-based learning or otherwise. And we use rubrics. I have a generic project-based rubric that my students use. And then when they're getting confident enough, they get to the point where they can develop their own rubrics. So they self-generate using this. I give them a template, and then they have some word banks to grab criteria from if they need help guiding through the process of creating their own rubric. So self-generated rubrics are really important in self-directed project-based learning. And I would hope at some point you could get your students to that level where they feel confident doing that because every learning experience is personalized. If students are designing their own project-based learning experiences, criteria or goals or growth are not going to look the same from one student to the next. So the evaluation should not be the same either. And an assessment portfolio. My students always add their project-based learning outcomes to a digital portfolio that I've created for them. I make a copy and send it out to each student. It's a Google Slides. And they add everything in there, their reflections, their rubric scores. They add photographic evidence of their final product and their authentic presentation. They might add an interview that they've had with a community expert on their topic, and so on. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they can add there, but it's basically a place for them to showcase their learning experience. And that you can get for free from me. I will let you know how to do that in just a second. But you can grab your own copy of that and distribute copies to your own students. Okay, so when to use self-directed project-based learning and how. I've seen it done in a variety of ways. I kind of do it sort of passion project style because I am a project-based educator. I worked at a school for 10 years where my students did this. It was kind of advisory style. So my students would come in and they would get started with whatever project they had going on. Every single student in my class had something different going on, a different project going on. Occasionally we would do group projects, but for the most part, it was, if you look at it as a course that is strictly self-directed project-based learning. So I think that's really good for an advisory, summer school sessions, and then like what I was talking about, if you have a class where you can really just allow students to do really open-ended topics and project experiences. You are likely right here, subject-based courses. So I am also a science teacher. So at my school, I would do science seminars, and I would have my students do self-directed project-based learning around a theme that I would give them. So let's say it was ecology or habitats or something like that. That was a common one. My students really liked that project. That they would choose a habitat and design a project around it. And when I say it's personalized for each student still and self-directed, even though I'm giving them these parameters, because they're still choosing their own habitat to study. They're still choosing their own community experts to speak with. They're still choosing how they're going to demonstrate learning. So if there's a student who discovered in their personal learning plan that they're very interested in graphic design, they will possibly make an infographic as their final project or as their final product. So it is still very personalized and it is still self-directed, even though I base these experiences around a subject, a specific subject. So students can design their project experiences around specific standards that I give to them even, and they do that in my science classes. And then this is probably fewer of you, but I also do self-directed project-based learning with my own children when we go on travel experiences, as well as my students. I was a high school educational travel coordinator at my school, so I had a lot of experience taking students on educational trips, and every one of those trips included self-directed project-based learning experiences. Either students were helping plan the trip, which is a really amazing experience, and I hope everybody gets a chance to do that at some point in their life. There's so many skills and so much content involved in planning a trip. So I highly recommend that. But there's also self-directed PBL experiences that I have my students do either while we're traveling or before we're traveling to be really prepared or to learn about the destination and so on. So those are a few ways to implement self-directed project-based learning in your classroom. So I talked about my personal learning plan, my project design workbook. You can see here, this is a mind map for students to really figure out what final product would be really good for whatever project they're designing, how to write a project driving question, the template. So this is the project proposal that I was talking about. My students basically fill this out, and it is basically a plan for their project on one piece of paper that they can look back to over and over if they're losing sight of what they're trying to do. And then this is my teacher planner. It's digital, so my students drag and drop these elements, like choose a project topic. I'm going to do that on March 4th. Community experts. On March 10th, I'm going to have students reach out to community experts via email or whatever. And then evaluation materials. This is my self-directed or self-generated rubric, the generic rubric, and a reflection. And this is a reflection slideshow, so it's not just, writing the answer to a question that I give them, which is also valuable. But this is a way for students to kind of showcase sessions or, like this is really good for the end of the year or after a class or even after a project-based learning experience, a specific one. They can go through and answer these questions and add photos of, like this one. This question is all about what challenges did they face in the process, and they can answer that question as well as add photographs of them maybe doing some trial and error on a STEM experience, for example. And then this project-based learning assessment portfolio that I keep on talking about, all of what I've already shown you, any project-based learning outcome is thrown into this so that at the end of the session, students can show the cumulative outcomes of their experiences. So they can add pictures of their final product. They can add their rubrics, reflections. We've talked about that. But you can get this for free from me. Okay, hang on. I'll get there. Okay, so what now? Start self-directed project-based learning on your own. If this is something that's really interesting to you, take what I've told you in this video and go with it. Try it, see what happens. But if you're looking to save some time and you're looking for materials that are already ready for your students, I recommend you go to my blog, experientiallearningdepot.com. I have a project-based learning blog series that is specifically self-directed for self-directed learners. And then I highly recommend getting my self-directed project-based learning starter kit, which includes everything that I've talked about: the PLP, the design workbook, the toolkit, the planners, and then that reflection slideshow that I showed you back here is a bonus on there. So you get that for free with this starter kit. And that is on, Teachers Pay Teachers, Experiential Learning Depot. And I highly recommend that. Everything's just there. And then the portfolio. You can get this portfolio from me for free by signing up at experientiallearningdepot.com. That's one thing you get from me for free. There's a couple of other things. I have a resource library for experiential learning and a sample planner that you also get. But the biggest and most important part about signing up with me is that you get support along the way. Blog post alerts, freebie alerts, updates, and so on. And then get support and encouragement from my experiential learning community on Facebook. PBL is a big topic there. There's a lot of really talented, innovative educators in this group that are great for offering suggestions and support. That's Experiential Learning Community for K-12 Teachers on Facebook. I highly recommend joining that. And that's it. So that is how you can start self-directed project-based learning right now in your classroom. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, always reach out, experientiallearningdepot@gmail.com, and find us on social media in the Facebook group. And good luck to you.